this is a new format for me. So, I think I can kick it off by saying that we talked a lot about what game designers can learn from magic and magicians. And while we have Mariano here, I would like to know what do you think magicians can learn from us?
Also, the opposite is true. And I want to give you just a small example from my personal experience. I dig into magic literature since a number of years, and I have found in a video game an idea which is completely new to magic community. In Nintendo's DS Magic Show, there is one of the tricks which involves a number of free choices and dealing with numbers. So in a section of the game, you arrive to a specific number, for example, the number 6, and you are given the choice between option A and option B. The option A does 6 minus 4, and the option B is 8 minus 6. So you are free to choose between A and B, and visually they seem really different, but actually they both bring to 2. So this is a force, a typical force. And I've never seen this force in Magic. It has been implemented in the Magic Show in Nintendo DS. And it's interesting because it is not immediately clear that the two different operations bring to the same result. Also because the previous options lead to different results. And the core of the trick is that one of the results must be forced, but you probably get unnoticed because there are many different choices during the trick. So it's an interesting thing we learn from you, game designer. And I take the occasion to thank all of you because there is not such a space in Magic. You created this small niche, and it's extraordinary to spend time in a room full of people belonging to this niche. There is not such a niche in Magic, so thank you for welcoming me here with you. Let's hope to be able to create some awareness also in Magic to create spaces like this in my professional field. Now I want to make you a question because we magicians are interested in your perspectives on also on our art. I think one of the way to be creative is to try to imagine your tools, how can they be digitized? And in particular, some times ago, when I was using the mouse, that old interface, you remember the mouse? Now everything is touch. When using the mouse, I noticed this strange similarity between the mouse and the planchette of the Ouija board, the board to call the spirits, the mediumistic board. The planchette has the same role as the mouse, moving on a mouse pad and choosing the letters. So I developed a magic trick involving this, in which this connection is revealed at the end as a coup de théâtre. And so this idea of using interfaces in bizarre way, I think it can be stretched in many directions. I can imagine Harry Potter's magic wand with Nintendo's controller. Do you have experiences of bizarre ways to use interfaces?
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole field where people are researching how to create controllers. I think there was one of the talks about the Ghost game, which I don't remember, with Ghost Boy, where the controller is the Ghost Boy. And that's not so much magic, but there's one fascinating, it's not so much a game, but visual reality experience, which is interpreted by Darren Brown, which I think is just fascinating. So one of the things that we deal as a problem with virtual reality is once the user wears the headset, you sort of already break the physical immersion a bit. You're like, oh, now I am in VR, right? So the statement of the whole idea of this is fully immersive and presence and all that work kind of gets a bit dodgy just the moment when you wear the VR headset, because you're saying that, you know, that added interface. So what Darren Brown did, which I thought is just amazing, is that he had a trick going on in London, which is called the ghost train. And in the train, you basically are going in a high-speed train where the illusion comes from the VR, and the illusion is that your life is ending and it's an apocalypse and stuff. But when you enter that ghost train exhibition, he asks you to wear a gas mask because obviously you're going in this apocalypse. And as a participant of that, you wear the gas mask, which is quite heavy, And the whole idea of VR being an extra thing which disturbs the immersion is now this heavy thing sitting on your head, reminding you that you're in an apocalyptic situation. So he just took the interface and added it as part of the illusion. So now wearing that head mask, when the VR is running about you're in the train, and you also physically enter a train, but then after that, when you see the illusions, you're like, okay. So yes, this is not so much a game, but I thought this is a very interesting use of an interface that game developers use a lot in a way to break that issue that we have with the heavy VR headset. Yeah, I can't think of like more interesting interfaces, but I know that there's a paper by Bruce Tongazzini about how designers can use interfaces from Magic to make it better. Maybe look at that paper. It's by Bruce Tongazzini. It was written in the 90s. And it's one of the things is how you can use like incense sticks to feel meditation via a computer, and he's also using tricks from magicians. So yeah, I got that for you.
We will tweet all the relevant link of our dialogue and more, because I already did it during a fantastic talk. So if you look for my name on Twitter, you will find this thread with a number of suggestions also behind what we will say. A magic experience you can have by playing a very well-known video game is Metal Gear Solid 1. There is a character called Psycho Mantis, which reveals something of you which is mysteriously got how. He don't read your mind, but he reads your memory card. And by reading the previous games you played, it reveals you during the game, so you're astonished. And also try to guess your behavior by counting the number of save game you have. If you have many, you are a very nervous person who is afraid of dying. And so this idea of using the cold reading, which is a typical technique of mentalism, to astonish the player, can be of use in some of your work. In fact, monitoring the activity of the player during the game can help you to create a sort of chart of his attitude, behavior, which can be revealed in a later stage as an information which comes from the stars, the zodiac, the horoscope.
So you basically kind of track the player behavior and create a reading on their behavior. Oh, that's pretty interesting. I might have to try that. So like, I'm going to change the topic a bit. So I did a small study with a lot of players, and the study was about what in a moment-to-moment cycle of gameplay keeps you going. You know, I just wanted to ask a lot of people who play different kinds of games that question. And I was expecting a lot of things, like I was expecting progress, reward, achievements, mechanics, a lot of game-related stuff as the output, even rules and stuff, which was one of the main things that people talked about. But one thing that really stood out was uncertainty. So I did a grounded theory research approach for that. So a lot of players talked about the basic need of uncertainty that keeps them going. So what is the game going to bring me next? And then moving on to when they bring that next to me, how will I react and what is the outcome? And the more I research Magic, I feel that apart from all the illusion and apart from all the hoopla of the reveals and the surprises, the underlying notion of uncertainty that the spectators feel while a magic trick is going on is quite at the essence of it. And this is where I feel Magic and games like really come together in terms of interaction and uncertainty. Would you agree, or have I got something wrong there?
I like this, and in fact, some magicians have started to challenge the masculine and superhero figure of magician, who know everything and can reveal any detail, secret of your life, by reversing the thing. For example, in one famous routine, you make 3 persons pick a card, and you reveal the first one with the method, the second one with the second method, and at the third one you say, I'm bored of this figure, no insanity. You know what? I don't know your card. And this, the trick is ended. So this is a surprise, which is in a completely different, it's a different kind of surprise, but it's a surprise. our goal is to surprise. So, and it also detached the idea that surprise is only applaud a man who knows everything. Maybe there are subtle surprise, and in this case, the idea of being able to reveal my ignorance is a surprise in itself. So in this case, the uncertainty becomes the core ingredient of my humble revelation that I'm not a Superman.
Yeah, yeah. So the thing is that magicians have also started plugging their tricks in the magic a lot, like revealing. Like, for example, Teller does that a lot, right? Like, while doing the magic, they also say, this is how I did it, and then they do something else, which is beyond that. And I think game designers can be a bit tongue-in-cheek about it. So for example, say we are using lighting to create attention in a certain direction. So you can keep doing that, but then you can tell the player that that's what we're doing, and then see what's the uncertainty the next time. So should I take this path or not? Have you tricked me? So I think magicians have gone quite far into like being tongue-in-cheek and saying what they're doing and then reversing the surprise. Like, for example, the example you gave. And I think games are not exploring that bit of being transparent about the boundaries of game and yet crossing it as much. So I think there's a scope over there of being a bit more magician-like in telling the stories. I don't know. I gotta try.
And given that I like the historical perspective of my matter, I also dig into the story of magic and video games relationship. And I tweeted a link to the first article with the code of a program reading the mind of the audience. But a more interesting article of the 1990 by Martin Gardner explores an interesting triangle, which I leave you as a suggestion for exploring the topic, because it's still to be explored in deep, which is to break with the typical relationship of the video game with a single or massive community of players by creating a triangle in which there is the program, the application, the software, the magician, and the audience. And the game can play as a stooge for the magician, so it is the tool the magician used to read the mind or to astonish the audience, or the opposite, which is still more interesting. The computer seems to be able to read the mind of the audience because of the secret role of the magician acting as a stooge for the software itself. Many apps sold to magicians are based on this last interaction between the owner of the app, which is the stooge of the app, who asks a person, just name any card. Then by unlocking the phone, there is a way to unlock the phone and communicating the value of the card thought of. And so the phone can say, okay, have you your card in your name? I think it's the Three of Hearts. Wow. What is the trick? It is the person who has interacted with the phone. So this triangle, magician, phone, and audience, can be explored, can be interesting, because it can also be hidden, and if you hide it very well, the app, the video game, seems really to be able to do things which are completely impossible. This is inspired to 18th century's Mechanical Turk playing chess.
Mechanical Turk does that, right? So I don't know if you're familiar with the Mechanical Turk, which is basically the starting of the first computer, or the way the automaton was written, or so is the legend. It's basically you're sitting against a computer that's playing chess. Correct me if I'm wrong, right? So it's a wooden computer, and it's a giant computer because it's from that era, and you're playing against the computer, and the computer beats you in chess, and you're like, this is magic, how is it possible? Especially in that era, right? And it's a giant machine which is doing that. When in reality, there was just it was just an ace chess player sitting inside that machine and moving the blocks. So the illusion is that computer is beating you or a machine is beating you. And that was actually the idea from where the first automaton or the idea of a computer came from. And one of the scientists is, I know he's in Australia, he's using this idea of similar kind of ideas, but one of the ideas that you talked about, that how to use the computer to create misdirection, etc. So it's a simple game that he's developing in which you're playing strategy against the AI, and the AI is in the beginning not an AI, but later on it's just creating misdirections of what it's planning. So it's creating pathways of what it's planning, but that's not what it's actually planning. It's quite classical to magicians making you look a certain way and then actually doing something somewhere else. I don't know how well these things link, but I guess we are sort of towards, I don't know how much time we have, but I just wanted to share that story with you guys.
Given that we are ending going back in the past, we are in the 18th century with a mechanical Turk. We still go in 17th century. Game happens by night. You will be able to play a video game based on a book of the 17th century. So you will find me upstairs. Il Labirinto, someone who was here yesterday has already seen it live, but you will be able to discover its secret live by touching the screen or playing with the actual book. So we will wait to you upstairs, and we thank you for your attention, and bye-bye.
Thank you so much. That was really exciting. Thank you. That was cool.